What is going on, Ape Nation? So a few days ago, we played an interview where Marc Cohodes was being interviewed, and it did real well on my channel. A lot of you seem to be very interested, so I've got another one for you today. This time, it's quite a bit different. He's still discussing AMC and GME and some of the corruption in the market, but I will warn you that about the first 3 minutes of it is very similar to what he said in the last interview, so just bear with me, be patient. If you've already heard that content, just skip it. But the rest of it gets pretty good, pretty exciting information there. Also, I do want to warn you that some stuff comes out, and it appears that he doesn't share the same views and beliefs as probably most of you subscribers to my channel, most of us apes. But I ask that everybody just watch and listen and be respectful in the comments, because he is kind of old school, so, that's his opinion, that's his outlook. We're just taking a look at it, and, everybody can make their own mind up from there. But we are going to get right into it. Before we do, I do ask that you do smash that like button so that the YouTube algorithm shares this with as many apes as possible. Also, if you're new here and if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, tap that notification bell, because I drop content just like this every single day. And now, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video.
I go after bad people, bad companies, frauds, criminals, things like that. And there are very, very, very few people left on the planet who do this. And not only does it serve a purpose, let's use my friend Jim Carruthers as an example. He single-handedly exposed INSYS, which is that fentanyl selling drug company where the main guys are going to go to prison, which killed tens of thousands of people. And if not for his work, others would not have never picked it up, and the company could still be doing what they're doing. I don't know how much Carruthers and his fund made or lost on INSYS, but he served society a greater good. The same thing with the people who exposed the money laundering fraud of Wirecard. My friend Fraser Perry ended up in someone's trunk. I mean, he's lucky they didn't kill him. And whether it's me exposing AAI Farm over the years, or others exposing Valiant or Concordia, or my battles with my medics, Media Vision, people have ended up in prison because of real diligent work by members of the short community who do their work. And those people right now are in danger of going out of business, will be out of business, are out of business, or very, very, very close to being out of business. Probably the dedicated short funds across the world probably now are down to less than $1 billion. I think Chanos is functionally done. I think Carruthers is functionally done. This is very sad for me, but you can't, under the current circumstances, run a business where names can go up between 5 and 100 times on you in a week. There's no way to hedge yourself against that kind of existential risk. And to me, it's very sad, which is why I think it's very important to speak out. I don't have a fund. I haven't had a fund for years. I'll never have a fund. I don't want to have a fund. It's a miserable, miserable existence. So of the diehard people who do this work at a very high level, you have Grego, you have Fraser, you have a few others who, as some people would say, activist shorts. Aurelius does a really good job. But most of as we segue from the people, the legacy people who do this at a high level, most of these activist shorts, as I call them, are smash and grab guys. They shouldn't be allowed to do, they can be allowed to do whatever the hell they want to do, but they take a short position in the morning, they write a report in the afternoon, and they cover at night. And that's no way to run a railroad. It deceives people. It's bad. It pisses the Robinhood and the Reddit and regular investors off. And that's why you get the legacy hate for those type of people, the activists.
And part of that is they also have a long part of their book, and the prime brokers are allowing them to have extreme leverage. So they've got these long and shorts, and they're playing this leverage game during the risk on cycle. And so I just want to clearly delineate the difference between a short seller and a long short fund. You're
jumping 1 second ahead of me. I've talked about the second group, which is the activists, and then the third group, which I have absolutely no stomach for, are these long short managers which use excessive leverage. And that would be derivatives of the SAC crowd and Melvin, who got in trouble, and derivatives of the Tiger Cub crowd who got in trouble. And you either have a long book or a long book mixed with a short book, but you don't need excessive leverage in these markets and in these days. You put the system at risk. And what happened with Melvin and or SAC and or who led to it, unclear exactly who led to it. These guys should not be on leverage. They should not be on excessive leverage. If you can't make normal returns in this market, you probably shouldn't be in the business. Because when you use excessive leverage and you have prime broker issues, brokerage firm issues, contagion risk, factor risk, it leads to huge problems like the ones we've seen. And the truth and the facts are all very elusive. The truth, everyone has their own truth, but there really is only one truth. And I can't stand what's gone on. I can't stand how the media has characterized this. They've dummied this down to the upstarts, the revolutionaries against the suits. That's not the message. The message is everyone who can trade should be able to trade. Everyone who has an investment account should be able to invest however you want. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to put little league batters up against Bob Gibson pitching, because that will not work out well. It can work out okay for a batter or two, but it's not going to work out well over time. And I want to stick a big ass stake in the ground to say, this is very wrong. Instead of working on the political narrative, people need to work how to fix the system so it's fair for all concerned. It's not fair for the big guy. It's not fair for the little guy. And it's extraordinarily dangerous with what's going on, extraordinarily so. So I think it's important to speak out. And if I have to speak out every day, so be it. But those are the three pods. We have the real serious people like myself, Chanos, Carruthers, a handful of others. We have the pretenders, which are these activists who run the smash and grab things. And we have the over leveraged in it to make a buck however they can as the long short over leveraged hedge funds. So that's the landscape as I see it. And those are really the three categories.
Exactly. I'm glad you delineated for us. And we'll come back to this idea of systemic leverage in the system. But I just want to clearly highlight that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're on the side of the little guy. You're on the side of these Wall Street bet guys. It's just you can't understand why they're upset or attacking, actual guard dogs of frauds, those kind of short sellers. They're on the same team. It's the other guys that are on a different team, and people may get upset about the short sellers in Tesla. So then, maybe Elon and Chamath come after the short sellers, or they pile onto this bandwagon when they have an axe to grind against people that are just trying to play take the other side of their long book.
Well, see, that's 100% correct. I probably get a dozen DMs a day from people who lost their absolute ass in names I was involved in. Concordia in Canada, Home Cap in Canada, MyMedics, you name them, I get it from them. And one story is sadder than the next. They're so bad, I feel like sending them money. That's how bad it is, because people have lost it all. And they say, if I would have only listened, if I would have only known about you, if I would have only paid attention. Well, I don't go on the Cartoon Network, which is called CNBC, on purpose, because it's bullshit finance dummied down to fool and betray the little guy. I'm friends with the little guy. I like the upstarts. I like the individual being able to do well, because that's what the society is about. I can't stand when they get screwed. But the problem is, when I speak out against frauds, I get an FBI visit from a bribed senator. I get sued. I get threatened. I have a disabled son. His life's been threatened dozens of times, and it's no fun. And eventually, I'm 60 years old. Eventually, you say, what the fuck am I doing this for? And I keep coming back to, I'm doing it to try to make a difference, to try to move the needle, to try to help fellow man out, because the brothers here are going to get laid away. And whether it's GME, I'm not involved in any of these names, GME, iRobot, EXPR, whatever it is, the silver short. People should never, ever, ever, ever buy a name because of a short squeeze. That's the absolute worst reason to do anything. If you like something and there's a short, well, the game's on and we'll see what happens. But this whole concept to think that you're squeezing or harming the man or the suit or whatever is very, very, very misplaced. The guys who own baseball teams are these leverage long only funds, not the short seller. You have the Teppers of the world and this clown Plotkin who blew himself up, and the guys who own the Milwaukee Bucks. These guys are a dime a dozen, and the only way they have money and have made their fortunes is through use of excessive leverage. Same thing with Stevie Cohn. He's not so smart. He's not that good at all. I paid a $1 billion fine to the government for playing around with funky information. He's back at it. He should never have been let back at it. And he uses an inordinate amount of leverage to get his returns. And that's not right. And Elizabeth Warren, who I like, and my lawyers this weekend, we wrote a letter to some senators. Her idea of a wealth tax is populist, and it could make some sense. But what I'm going to say is very important, and I hope people listen to it. There should be something called a too big to fail tax. Everyone who's viewed as financially significant should pay a huge tax up front so that you and I and fellow taxpayers don't have to pay extra taxes or we run a bigger deficit to bail these guys out. They should pay money up front. If you're too big to fail, like Citadel or SAC or Goldman or the banks or the brokerage firms, or if you use excessive leverage, you should pay a significant tax every year, every quarter on every trade to cover the system in case there's an accident. And there was an accident this past week, and there was an accident by some lowlife who runs a fund called Melvin. And it got contagious across the globe and to other funds, and it caused a disaster. It's not a Lehman moment. That stuff is over dramatized or whatever that word is. But it created a huge problem for a lot of folks. And that shouldn't be that way. If you have a problem in your portfolio with your trades, you should pay a price, pay a heavy price. If you go out of business, it happens. But you shouldn't be in a position to bring down brokerage firms, friends of yours, short sellers, leverage players. It shouldn't be allowed to happen. So the use of leverage by these punks who have more money than brains is the problem. It's not the Robinhood guys. It's not the Reddit guys. It's the excessive leverage by hedge funds that have caused significant problems for others and for the system.
And we'll come back to like how you regulate that in the future. And quite frankly, like you said, that's the game, right? As soon as you can get your hedge fund to tens of billions of dollars, then your primes will give you excessive leverage. And then if you blow up, you have a government backstop. They'll come bail you out. And that's the game.
Exactly. That's the game, and it becomes money. Joe Sixpack, for lack of a better term, Joe and Jane Sixpack, who are Robinhood accounts or they got an account at IB, they look at these people and they say, what's so great about Stevie Cohn? How did he get his money? Well, find out how he made his money. Find out how he gets his. It's not that he's that smart. He knows how to beat and knows how to game the system with excessive leverage. Same thing with Ken Griffin at Citadel. Same thing with the Tiger Cubs. Same thing with all these spinoffs. So the average guy gets pissed off, and they get pissed off for very good reasons. And then when these guys fail, it's those guys getting bailed out. So the problem is everything needs to get restructured, rebuilt, reformulated, recircuited, so the system itself is not at risk. Goldman makes a fortune by lending to these guys. They make it in stock loan. They make it on margin. They make it on giving guys more money. And that's the problem. If you can't make money just picking stocks one way or the other, excessive leverage can only kill you. And that's the misnomer here. I mean, you won't be able to make as much money at a 2 and 12 or 2 and 20 or 3 and 30 fund. You won't be able to make as much money. But again, if you're a decent stock picker and you're worth a shit, you don't need leverage. You just go out and you play it straight up. You play it man to man, and to the victor goes the spoils.
And let's talk about that systemic leverage that also applied to the actual business of Robinhood. So all along they were selling that order flow. That's how it was a free app. For most people that don't understand that, they're selling their customers' order flow to the Citadels, Susquehannas, Jane Streets of the world, and they're bringing in money for that. Not only that, they're lending out those stocks for the short interest players. So they're reaping the margin gains and the income off of that, and not sharing it with their customers. So they're taking in money on all different sides of the trade. And then when it comes to, volatility picks up and there's a large amount of players piling into GameStop and these other low float stocks, all of a sudden the regulators, the clearinghouses, whether it's DTCC or OCC, it says, hey, you have to post more margin, because a lot of times these trades are T+2. They may not settle for 2 days, and then it gets commensurately adjusted to each brokerage house. And so they had to post, some say, like as you alluded to before, it's like a fog of war. None of us know exactly what happened. We're trying to piece it together. But they had a margin call, some say upwards of $4 billion, and they maybe negotiated down to $700 million to $1 billion, and they're trying to scrape that money together to make that margin call. And this is why they limited their customers to only sell orders and no buy orders. So once again, the regulators allowed them to take an enormous amount of size of leverage that wasn't a prudent amount in case something like this happened. And now they get put in a rock and a hard place, and they're trying to scramble for funds everywhere. And quite frankly, if they just said, if they were on the side of their customers and said, well, we can't post that margin, we're going bankrupt. Well, everybody bought those stocks in a margin account, not as cash settled account. And as you know, now it goes into all the lawyers for 18 months and they can't get out either. So everybody was fucked all the way around. And it's because of the systemic leverage, and people think a bad day is never going to happen.
You're 100% right. But here was the simple fix. All these brokerage firms, and banks for that matter, will give you all the leverage you want when you're doing well. When you're doing well, they'll blow smoke up your ass. They'll give you whatever you want. But when things go rocky, they are the first to cut your throat. They are the first to cut your throat. And the simple solution with Robinhood, the problem with Robinhood, and the simple solution is they stopped and disallowed trading for one class of investors, which is never good. That is, to me, a hard stop and is not okay. What they easily could have done, me being the CEO of Robinhood, and let's say you being the head of operations, I would have said, hey, Jason, what's our VAR in GME, AMC, and all these funky names? And a VAR is value at risk. And someone would have said, we have 4.2 billion of exposure here. And I would have said, that's too much. And then you'd say, what do we do? And I'd say, let's go to 300% margin on these names. In other words, if you want to hold long or short GME, 300%, right? If you own 100 grand or short 100 grand or options in the name, you got to put up 3 times the amount of equity. Now, by doing that, you discourage trading in those names. You discourage it, but it's not a hard stop. If you want to play those names, that's the cost of playing poker. That way, you remain open. You remain people, if they want to trade, trade. If they don't want to trade, don't trade. You have house rules on margin, which are negotiable. And then you have Fed rules, which are non-negotiable. The Fed margin requirements, the Reg T is that is a hard stop rule. There is no wiggle room in that. There's plenty of wiggle room in house margin rules. And Robinhood got played. They got played by Citadel. They got played by big players on that day where they shut it off for their customers. And it was a huge disservice for all involved. And people didn't even understand what the hell margin is or what margin calls are. They just don't understand it until it's too late. And that's a shame. And the byproduct of that is you piss off a lot of people. And the people who get pissed off are guys like Portnoy, and he has a reason to be pissed off, and he has a big following. and he has a big megaphone. And on one hand, you have the Portney crowd, then you have the Chamath crowd, and then you have the Elon Musk crowd, then you have professionals, or let's call them suits, and no one gets along. No one can talk to each other. Everyone is dictating their point of view. There's no facts being kicked around. There's no hard evidence being kicked around. It's just a lot of screaming and jostling, and the shorts are the enemy, and all this and all that. And the average person doesn't take the time to think it through. They don't take the time to say what's really at play here. And it becomes a political game, and it becomes a CNBC issue where they have rappers on who don't know the first thing about GME or whatever, saying, hold tight. These guys can barely tie their shoes, yet alone give investment advice. I always break this out. This is the quote of the day. There it is. And it's from the New York Times, and it's dated Saturday, April 15th, 2000. So it's almost 21 years ago. It's almost 21 years ago. And it says the quote of the day, in quotes, "The lesson is going to be the market is not a game. The market is not a casino. It's a serious thing for serious people. And if you're wrong, be prepared to lose." Marc Cohodes. And that's 21 years old. And I could repeat that quote today. And it's 100% true today as it was 21 years ago. And the market could go up, the market could go down. Everyone's entitled to opinion. People can own stocks, commodities, this, that, or the other. But unless the government and the powers that be get this leverage situation squared away, so Joe Sixpack doesn't get rat fucked by the man and know what's going on, you're going to get more and more and more of this class warfare, if you will, or struggles behind the suits putting it to the guy. And it's deeply troubling to me, because you're talking about people's life savings here. We're not talking about monopoly money. We're talking about real money. And I'm happy when people make, and I'm sad when people lose, because I like to see everyone do well, except my enemies, which I look to put in the ground. But the average person, I'm happy about the movement. I'm happy people have made money.